Good morning. Thank you for joining with us. Then I have a question. If you don't hear the sound or you see doesn't look so good, please text me or a message and the comments in the blog. I will be cameraman today. Okay, we'll start.
So hello everyone, once again. This is our second attempt at community, you can say, at a time when still the virus is really raging, not under control, I would say. There are over 1 million infections in the world, and in the United States and in New York City in particular, we have a terrible situation, I must say. So, everyone, please be safe, stay home. Social distancing is critical. It's been shown to really affect and actually, finally, to cure the malaise that we are all faced with right now. Well, that said, once again, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night to all who are here. Today I thought that I would first summarize these basics about the embouchure and about the acoustics of the clarinet, which I had presented in the last of these live streams. Then also address some of your questions, and I hope to be able to do a little bit about what I consider, what I would say is the physical nature of music and of artistic expression. So first of all, just the summary of what I was talking about before. And, oops, I need a barrel over here. This is really kind of homespun affair, so bear with me. The only thing is, I'd like to see here so I can see the comments that people do. I don't see that now. How do I do that? I apologize to everyone because I'm really a novice at this Facebook business. Yeah. Oh, here we are. Okay, I don't know. Almost.
Oh my god. Yeah, but see more. That's English. See more, sis.
But I don't see anything.
What do you mean? Do you see that?
Oh, do I see now? Okay.
What? No. You got the comments from.
But where are the comments? I don't see any. The comments I see are from last time, nothing from this time. This is just do I press start? Everyone must be laughing at me now.
You should use the Michael's.
What's that?
Michael's the email.
No, that is the different thing. That I know. It's just comments because I would like for people to comment now, if that's possible. You understand as well.
Now I'm clear. Understand.
You see, no, the comments from before I have already in my mind. That's
you see
no problem.
Here? I'm so sorry.
Yes.
And then underneath. This is not the one.
No, that's from last week. This is very embarrassing. So let's hold it.
Is it?
Okay. Well, let's forget about this. What I want to do is when comments come in, maybe then you should just tell me what they are, okay? Because somehow last week was okay, but this is not now. Not really. Okay. If any one of you who are listening, the particular expert at this, you can sort of chime in and tell me how to actually access what I'm supposed to see here.
Okay. But
Anyway,
keep
okay.
on.
Well, I have the barrel on here, and right now I'll just summarize very much what I was talking about before. It has to do with the fact that the way the clarinet works is with a fundamental register and harmonics above that. All wind instruments work basically the same way. The special feature, of course, is that the clarinet skips, if we call the fundamental pitch the first partial, it skips the even partial, so that we don't have the second partial, we don't have the fourth partial, etc., etc., etc. And of course that contributed to the fact that the clarinet is a bit of a latecomer in terms of musical history. So the first actually evidence of the clarinet came from the workshop of Joseph Denner, and that was already in the beginning of the 18th century. And Denner obviously somehow understood that if you take the chalumeau and you try to overblow, you get some kind of squeak. And he understood that that squeak was actually a 12th or one of these odd partials. 1 second. Are you, everything okay? Okay, good. Yeah, I think the next session will be really very professional. Okay, bear with us. Okay, and if we look carefully, we'll see that the difference between the chalumeau, I don't have one here, I was going to do a whole presentation about performance practice and historical instruments in one of the later ones. But if we have our imagination, the chalumeau basically had a key here and a key here, and they were at the same level. Now the inspiration of Denner, or whoever it was who actually invented the clarinet, so to speak, is to understand that you need a register key which will elicit the third partial, or the odd partials. And let me put this on here. Okay, if we actually check the instrument and we check where this is, it's approximately 1/3 of the way down to around here. So that register key that we have elicits the third partial. And of course there's a possibility of moving it up and down a couple millimeters, but you cannot move it particularly from this position. Otherwise you end up not at the right place to, in a certain sense, touch or elicit the third partial. So that's the essential acoustical nature of the instrument. Now, along with that, though, we have the issue that the register key does not work perfectly throughout the whole range. Of course, if you're playing bass clarinet, you need 2 register keys. Probably 3 would be even better. And on a regular clarinet that we have 1, and it works well enough, But as you go up and down, it works less well. Let me see if I can find a reed that works. This is interesting. What did I use last time? Let me see. Quite soft, but a little too soft. I think I used not this one, but stuff is stuck. Here we go. No, still. Here we are. Okay. Okay, but you know, I wanted to use the B flat clarinet somehow, not the A clarinet, although I don't know why. I think everyone's just laughing at me now. Completely. So, here we go. Only a half step difference, but anyway, okay. So I'm sure that you all have had some experience teaching beginners, or you maybe even remember when you just started, and of course the first issue was you go here. Oh, I can't do it. That is going over the break, as we call it. And of course the issue there is that we are simply switching from first partial to third partial, and if you remember from the last time, the issue of the reed and how it is analogous to a string vibrating, so we need to find a note on the reed which is lower, so that, and what happens to people is that through probably force of will, simply, the student opens the mouth and more clarinet comes in. That way. And you can all do an experiment. You can bite very hard and then pull down, and you will actually get the note to speak, even though you're using much more pressure than you should and then probably that you ever will use. Okay, now the next issue is this. We go up, and you get that, and go, oh no, what happened? I can't play. But what happened was this, that after a certain point, the register key stops functioning. So, in other words, the register key is really optimized for something around here. And you can actually do an experiment, and if you just take the right place on the reed without the register key to get the third partial, so and put the register key down, you will find that you get no change of pitch. If you go lower or you go higher, you do get the change of pitch. And finally, if you get, after a certain point, this stops working. And if this is not helping you particularly anymore, what is critical is the positioning here. So, when you have the register key working, you have leeway in terms of how you can play. But in the extremes of the instrument, you don't. So, what happens here, again, you pull the clarinet to find the place, and you can play correctly. So in fact, for all of us, a very good exercise is to play the third partial without the register key, And we can start it at a nice and we can try to play the third partial up and down without this, and that way we actually experience where we have to play on the reed. Okay. Now it would be nice if perhaps, right. If any of you who are listening, or watching I should say, have questions as I am presenting this, please chime in and I will try to answer what I can answer. Is anybody? No? And may I ask also, how is the sound? Can you hear? Okay, great. Because last time it was a little problematic for certain people. Oh, I'm so glad. Okay, so this actually works. Wait a second. What I wanted to say about the register key applies to all the registers actually. So if we are playing fifth partial, we have that, and when you go again up, that same thing can happen. We need to be in the place here. This way. Okay, so once again, the essential exercise that we have is that we take if you take your finger here and you go in, out, out, in, out, out. Or you can say, o, u, o, something like that. Then we can get. And in the beginning, when we do this exercise, the important thing is don't try to slur, but actually feel that you relax or even open your mouth in between. But don't use the tongue, because that just confuses things in terms of the sensitivity of your lip. Then when you can play these going up 1, 3, 5, all the way up and down that way, you can move on to doing higher partials than that. So you can go from it's a pretty bad read. That's a little better. Okay. So, and they can do that up and down, of course. And you know, if you can do from the very low, you can get lots of different harmonics on the clarinet, and that actually is the beginning of being able to play multiphonics in a very convincing way. And I think we will get to that perhaps in the later one of these sessions. So, then after you can play higher partials too, then you need to try to slur. And slurring is much more difficult, but it is the most important thing in terms of learning to negotiate these partials. That way. Because most of the time, we won't be playing detached notes, but we will actually be playing phrases which move up and down this way, which are more often than not actually slurred. So this is, again, the basics of the harmonic structure of the clarinet and how we have to proceed in order to learn to negotiate the different registers in a very clear, stable, effective way, where in fact you can play all of those very high notes with great definition, and also without a feeling that, oh no, I won't make it, or that you'll start bleeding because you're trying to bite so hard. And what is a little bit counterintuitive is that as you go up on the clarinet, in fact, you should open your mouth and not close it, not bite down.
I have two related
Questions?
questions
Oh,
I will show
fantastic.
you now.
Yes.
And here.
Yeah.
This is,
Oops.
hi.
Hello.
She's
Yes.
walking
The term partial.
Yeah, Jiggy.
Ah,
Hi
okay.
from Korea.
Yes, I will do that.
This is
yes.
the one, and also Miha Germek.
Yes.
This the
Yeah.
question.
Okay. Yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead.
You read
The
that.
goes quite high. Do you think tongue positions? Yeah, I will. I will do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else?
That's
right now?
that's a related question.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. I was actually the second question has to do with the tongue moving, and I was going to get into that also. The first one wanted me to explain partials. I think people who didn't come last time. Okay, we can call partials harmonics. I and many people in English use the word partials. Now it's called a partial because it's a part of the total harmonic spectrum which is included in any note. So I should probably just recapitulate what I was talking about in the very beginning of the last time, which comes, if I go back to here, and we take, for instance, there, we can call that the fundamental pitch, or we can call that the first partial. And then that octave we can call the first harmonic, or we call it the second partial. So now I will just play just talk about partials, thank you. So this will be second partial, and third partial, fourth partial. Let's see, I'm going to push this back. Fifth, you can hardly hear it. Yeah, sixth and seventh partials. So, they all involve touching a node on the string which makes the string vibrate in a certain number of parts. And the reason I like partials is that it actually tells us how many parts the string is vibrating. So in other words, the first partial, the string vibrates like this in 1. You touch in the middle, we call that a node, or in English we call it really a standing node, because in fact that position will not move. Then the string will vibrate in 2 parts. You touch 1/3 of the way for the third partial, and the string will vibrate in 3 parts. You touch 1/4 of the way, And again, string will vibrate in 4 parts. I don't know if I did 4 or not, but that doesn't matter. Anyway, and etc., etc., 5, 6, 7, and theoretically there's an infinite number of possible partials that there are, and that's actually quite interesting. And the one reason why, for instance, instruments which are larger, like in the winds or in the clarinet, the bass clarinet, for instance, or in the string world, let's say the cello, can actually go as high as the smaller instruments, because that you have more length that in order that you can actually divide. And that's also why, for instance, the E-flat clarinet has more difficulty playing very high than the B-flat clarinet does. Okay, so hopefully this is clear for partials. Let me ask if it is. You can. Is it?
Okay, there another question.
Yeah, wait. Then let me do the other question.
Okay, yeah.
First, another person mentioned that when he does the partials, he does the tongue position. The tongue position changes, and I will be speaking more about that. I think maybe now is a time to do that. But most important thing here is when you're doing the exercise that you discover what works. What I'm telling you is what I would call experiential. In other words, it's not something that comes out of a particular theory or whatever, although it has something to do with that, with the theory and with acoustics, but the actual mechanism you will discover. And it's of course a little more complicated than I'm explaining now, but if you can do it, and it sounds good, you're doing it correctly. If it doesn't sound right, you're not doing it correctly. So there should not be any kind of doubt in your mind about whether it's working or not. Okay, anything else?
So I go to the related.
Yeah, let's see.
We have a more question about the other things, but I want to do the one thing is related question is here. What would be an easy and simple way to explain this to children?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, of course, this is very interesting and very important. How do you explain this to children? I think in the beginning, maybe you don't need to go into all the theoretical background, to talk about the partials and the harmonic series and this and that and the other one. And of course, your student's just going to fall asleep. You may fall asleep trying to explain it too. But you just have them do. You just very much, I think you start with this here, and then, you can even just take, for instance, blah, 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 blah. I'm not, I'll put it over here, yeah. You can even take just the mouthpiece and have them just do this, so that this is not, of course, the way you're going to play, or the way your student is going to play, but this way, and then feel that the mouthpiece goes in, out, in, out. And they can feel where the teeth are feeling the reed underneath the lip. So in, out. And actually the important thing for all of us to realize with this not only exercise, but with this motion, is that for us, when we are doing it, it feels like a lot. It feels like you're going, wah! Like this. Oh, I'm opening my mouth so much. But for other people, it may not even be apparent. Okay. Now, before I go on, I want to also just mention about the idea that you should never move the embouchure. Then I will talk about tongue position also. And I believe that this comes from a misunderstanding. And this is what I mean by that. Now, if you actually don't move, then you get something like that. Or if you have more mouthpiece in the mouth, you can get more. But certain notes will be stuffy, certain notes will not speak, etc., etc. Now, if you play like that, the feeling that I have, for instance, is that every note speaks with the same amount of ease. So there's no note that's difficult, no note that's badly out of tune, etc., etc. And that feeling can be very stable. And so I think that people misunderstand that feeling for a concept where physically you do not move the embouchure. I don't know if that makes sense, but in any case, that's the way I look at it. And I have to say that much of this, what I'm talking about now, came when I started to teach people in a serious way. And I started by actually teaching pretty much the way I would say I was taught, and the way sort of standard teaching methods explain things. So I explained that no, you don't move the embouchure, everything is this way, and I was wondering, well, why is it that I can do things, but I can't get my students to do them? Then I looked inside myself, and I found that in fact I do things which are contrary to what I was explaining. And what I've been trying to do since then is actually explain how I do things with the hope that when people understand that, the whole security and level of playing the clarinet will change. And I think actually it has changed in the world quite a bit, in a very good way. Okay, so that's that. Now about the tongue position. Okay. And I don't like the word position. And for this I have to go back to here, and I have my rubber band still. And if we remember once again from this, from my last stream, we have the rubber band and we feel that here is like a rubber band. And at the same time, you stretch this. The exercise is that you sing, and that way you'll feel that the tongue is stretching this way. So the back of the tongue stretches up and actually widens at the top, and the front of the tongue pulls down. this way, and in fact creates kind of a spoon. If this is the tongue, it sort of goes like that. And what you will feel is that if this is the top of the palate of your mouth, this is the back of your tongue will push here and this way, and maybe a little forward moving, and the front will actually push down on your jaw. So I think what happens probably is that the tongue in fact pushes the jaw in the different directions, down or up, or relaxes and goes up a bit. See? So when the person who was I'll show you. This is my screen now, so it's like anyway. So the person who asked about the tongue, I think it's very true that the tongue is an integral part of what is happening, and what would be actually a good dissertation topic for a doctoral student who is actually combining music and physics would be, actually I would say music, physics, and biology. Would be to actually figure out really what is happening here. But for us, what we need is just the experience of how it works. Okay. You had
One
another
more question, maybe we can go.
Yes.
So, this is an interesting question.
Yeah.
From Samada Marabashi. Thank you.
To reach hard notes. Okay. Yeah.
The
He was
question.
asking about he said, is the strength of the reed important for reaching hard notes? It's both yes and no. So this is this reed I have here. And I can't really get up higher than that because the reed is quite soft. This is a kind of reed I would never actually play in real life, only in cyberspace, perhaps. But the issue, though, with the reed is that usually in the beginning, any reed, whether it's hard or soft, will be able to play throughout all the registers. But as it goes on, the reed becomes more inundated with moisture, you can say, and actually the vibrating of the reed actually causes stress to the reed. So if the reed is softer, you generally, finally, the reed will not be able to vibrate in the parts necessary to create the very high notes. So you do need to have a reed which has enough resilience, especially sort of round here below the tip, to produce the very high notes consistently through a long piece, let's say. So in the beginning it will work, but at the end maybe a soft reed will not work so well. One thing, though, is even if the reed is soft, if you let go of it for a minute, it can actually regain some of its resilience. So it may not work, you let go, and then you will find that it will work again. Then, you have to realize that the higher the partial, the more places you have on the reed which will work to produce that partial. So it could be that if you have a soft reed and you generally feel that on your mouthpiece it's more comfortable to play higher, for instance, if usually on my mouthpieces, which are quite long in the facing, I like to go up, so I play going up this way here. But if the reed is very soft, and probably this reed will end up being that way, but I'm not going to be playing it for long enough time for it to happen right now, I will actually do the opposite. And keep going down this way. You see, so I go into to the harder part of the reed, and then I can sort of coax the reed to vibrate in enough parts to produce the very high register. Okay, so I think I dealt with those questions. So I go back to the tongue issue now. So we have this exercise, and then the next exercise I have is here you open the mouth here, so you feel that this opens, and that's critical, so that the jaw is facing this way, sort of opens here. And I should mention that several clarinet players have come to me who have jaw problems or sometimes severe TMJ, and that actually helps alleviate that. So the more you can feel when you're playing the clarinet that this is open here, the healthier basically your jaw will be, I would say. As long as you don't sort of push it down so much, of course, you can overdo anything. So you do that first, and then you feel that you're doing with the rubber band the same thing. And then what you do is you take the reed here, and then put it out, and you pull it into your mouth. And as you are singing to get higher and higher, so that you feel the stretch of the tongue, you also feel that the reed pulls up this way here. So you're this way maybe. And that actually will show you what I could say the correct embouchure is. But again, the important thing is don't think about it too much. And this is something I will explain in a moment. But what we do with this kind of exercise is then you just play, and you feel what it feels like when you play with this sense of stretching. So this, you feel that the tongue is doing things here, and I will talk more about this right now, that the embouchure itself is not a thing, it's not a position, it's an action, or I could say even series of actions that we have. So it's something that is dynamic this way, and even if you're just holding a note, you don't just hold, but you actually, in a certain way, resist. And it's just like when I was saying, when you're holding this rubber band in a stretched position, it takes force to do that. And let's say I'm doing this, and I look very calm. Someone going by would think, oh, you're doing nothing. But in fact, there's a lot of force involved just trying to hold this open. And that's what happens here.
That must be
Yes.
related still to talking about personal questions.
Yes, of course.
This is Maya. Hi, how
Hi.
are you?
Yes.
It's there. Okay. Did you read?
Yeah, I didn't just say, let me see.
You just read them.
Different fundamentals for the same sound. Or is the required? Yeah, well,
Yeah.
okay.
Then also,
Yeah,
Amy, thank you. This
yes.
how to practice hearing.
The fifth, while playing.
Mm-hmm.
Hearing the fifth while playing the
Yeah,
third
we
partial.
don't need to.
No, you don't
Yeah.
need to do that.
Right, that's my question.
You don't need to do that. Here.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. I see. Okay. Now, first of all, the important thing is don't think about it. Think about things. This is a very important subject, and it has to do with the difference between what I would call two kinds of knowing. Because there's a knowing what. Like, well, I know that I'm in the room today. This is my room. And I know that I am in New York City. And I know that 2 plus 2 equals 4. That's knowing what? Does it equal 4? At least in this universe, I hope it does. Yeah. And knowing how. And knowing how to do something is like you know how to walk. You know how to eat your food. You know how this. But the problem we have with knowing how is that if we confuse the knowing what and knowing how, we can develop models which actually are not correct, that will get in the way of your actually knowing how to do something. And it's maybe that you have to know a little bit about knowing what. So I give the partial, you know that here, that way, that's 1/3 partial. Yeah, I know that that's third partial. Now, someone asked about hearing the fifth partial. You just do it. That's fifth partial. That way. So you need to know kind of how a bit. No, I'm sorry. You need to know what in the beginning, but how you get there. You don't have to say, I have to move this here and I have to move that there and this and that, and then it didn't work, but I did everything right because I moved this, I moved that, and I moved the other thing. See, instead you experience what it is, and when it is right, when it works, it is right. You see. So that way. I should actually mention more. You need to know a little more knowing what about partials on the clarinet. And it's the fact that the partials actually go flat on the instrument. And that's why we can't play all the registers with the same fingering. I wish we could. But in any case, we have to keep sharpening notes in order to actually produce the right pitch. So once again, from here, this is on a B-flat clarinet, it's a D, A, and should be F sharp, or concert C, G, and E natural. But what happens is, and that's almost right, and then the next one though, the fifth partial, is basically almost a half step flat. So instead of an F sharp, it's just an F that's a little sharp. That's why we open the fingers that way and actually raise the pitch. But we still should feel that that note comes from this D that's here on the clarinet. Now let's go one higher. We go to, for us in E, there, and then the B again is almost correct. And then we make it a little sharper. And if you want to, you can even add. And what we get is what should be a G sharp, but in fact is an exact half step too low, so it becomes a fantastic G. And for me, it's the G that I use, I would say 92% of the time. I have 7 other G's that I use, the other 8%. But that way. You see, then, so we have to account for the fact that the partials go flat this way. But the overall structure is always the same in that we do have for 1, 3, 5, etc. And you wonder about how do you hear the note. Let's say, well, I'll do this again. So if I play, oh, I missed third partial. I did that. You just keep moving until you find it. There. Then let's say we're going to fifth partial. Oh no. That actually ends up being a seventh partial. We don't even have to know that for the moment, but you say, wow, that feels too high. And then, okay, that's fifth partial. This way, you move there. And once again, here we have knowing what. I think everyone's going to get confused. But you take a string, and of course, the higher the partial, just remember, the more standing nodes there are on the string. So the more parts that it's vibrating in. So in between, and the simplest thing to show is if you do the second partial, let's say in the middle of a string, you're going like that, the middle. I wish I had some kind of whiteboard or blackboard, but we can have our imagination. This way, in the middle. If you're not quite that way, you will get a different partial if you touch, because you will be touching a place which will elicit a different number of vibrations. And that happens on the reed also. That's why you can get that before, probably, you get that. So this is more this way. Okay. And once again, we go back to knowing how. So what is important is that you do and you experience what sounds good, what is correct. And that's why in the beginning, you don't try to slur through, but open your mouth, relax here, and really move. You see, and what works, works. And basically, you have to practice this a lot so that these partials become your friends. Anyway, and I always give the analogy of string players who are always practicing shifts, because you have to practice going to the same place all the time. It's not sort of, oh, one day is here, one day is here, one day is here. The same thing on the clarinet. it's always there. So you have to practice going to the same place that way. And for that, we never get to be so accomplished in the way we play that we don't have to practice it. And I practice it a lot myself, yes, of course. I don't know if that's answered questions yet, but now more about the tongue position. The basic shape of the tongue will always be up in the back and pulling down in the front. But there will be different variations of that depending on the register you're playing. And that will also work with the jaw this way. And again, just experience it. Experience what sounds really great, and that's correct. And probably until you actually experience it, you will not really understand what I'm talking about. That way. So hopefully, can I go on to something else, or is this you think is enough? Or
Why
do we
not?
have more questions?
A lot more questions.
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
let me ask
Actually,
questions. Yeah. So I should answer
one
these
more.
questions.
It's kind of
Yeah.
it's a little from Harry.
Yes.
Hi. From
Oh,
Helsinki.
don't allow you to practice full sound. I know.
How do you practice if the neighbor don't allow you to play
Don't
the
allow
full
with
sound?
with full sound. Yeah, I know, and especially nowadays, because we have all students all over are homebound, housebound, and can't go to the practice rooms in schools, or we even the professionals may have studios, they can't go there, so we're actually at the mercy of our neighbors. So I think you have to give them earplugs. I'm joking, but I don't know what to say exactly about that. I always think it's important to negotiate so that there's some portion of time you can actually play with a full sound. And other times, one thing that you see, actually learning the partials, I always come back to this, is it allows you to actually play very softly throughout the instrument. So you can actually play softer, and so if you want. Something like that. But of course it's not ideal, and you have to experience being able to use air in a way that's very expressive and includes dynamic contrast. So I don't have a real answer to that except try to negotiate.
Alan Kay said it, leave the reed off.
Yeah, you can. That's possible. The only problem if I leave the reed on, that's you could play sort of like this. Probably don't get quite a sound, but you don't really experience what the clarinet should be. Yeah, and of course, if you're just practicing technical things, and I do that myself, is I will practice without putting even the clarinet in my mouth sometimes, so I feel the finger patterns. This is again a learning how, because you're learning the motion of the fingers this way. Okay. Let's see. I don't know if this was the same reed or a different one. Anyway, so that was The other thing I can say is good luck. You know, maybe give your neighbors a bottle of wine. Well, I don't know, because you can't even go out to buy it. This is
To
the
see
problem.
You should
That's
not
right.
see them. Knock the door. Don't.
That's right. You should not even see them. That's right. Yeah, that's
Can we? Do we go next time maybe? But
well, are there more questions related to this?
basically, that's it.
Yeah.
Uh,
Okay. Actually, I want to say one more thing, because I would like to get through a lot of this sort of very basic technical embouchure stuff now, because in later classes, or not even classes, live streams, I would love to deal with music itself and with the expression of playing, but of course in the beginning we need technique, and that's an important part. So this has to simply do my final mention about the embouchure. And many people say for the embouchure you have to take the corners and push them in, like that. And this I also see as a kind of half-truth. And the reason why is that if you actually are focused on the sides of your mouth, like this, then the front of the mouth loses structure. You see. But if you just feel this kind of rubber band stretch through here, the sides go in a very clear way. So when people say you have to pull the sides in this way, it's not wrong, but it can be very, very easily misinterpreted. So my advice always is don't worry about that at all, and worry about just a stretch here, like that. I know some people talk about the top lip pulling down, and of course that's completely correct and makes a lot of sense. You just feel this rubber band pulling down your mouth this way. And when you practice, it's a good idea to do as much as possible. So you feel like that where the limit is. See, so I was just doing so much that it's like, whoa, it's too out of control. And different reeds will have different limits. And finally, you will actually be able to feel the positioning of the reed, of the embouchure of the reed, which will allow the reed to work in the most resonant and the best way. This sort of answers the question before that I got. And but again, you have to experience things. So you try to open the mouth a lot when they're going. And as a kind of addendum, I should mention that I very often have encountered people who take their reed and say, oh, the reed, it's too stuffy and hard in this. And I actually go and I try it. I mean, I haven't done this very recently, of course. And I find, no, the reed is very soft. And the problem is that you're squashing it and you actually kill its resonance. So you have to be able to feel how open you have to be. And of course, the softer the reed, the more you have to open the mouth. And the harder the reed, the less you have to do that. Okay, so I have a feeling that I've probably covered what I need to do now. And if people in the meantime have questions later, you can please let me know, and hopefully I'll be able to answer them in the next.
So next, the Andy Simon from Hong Kong asking maybe third reason double tongue approach,
Yes.
you know,
So I will be doing.
and also how to the you know to play the violin piece. How do you transpose or
Right.
that kind of question maybe
right.
in the future.
Yeah. There's one very interesting question that Jose Taborda asked before, and he said, "If could you recommend some strategies about how to improve our study and research before playing a piece? Something like how to build a version." Now that I'm not going to answer now, but I think the next live stream I will devote very much to this question. Which is, how do you look at music? How do you create a version? And of course, if we're doing a transcription, you have a different way that you have to look at the piece than if you are actually playing a piece that is written for the clarinet, for instance. Now what I want to do is, I'm sorry, yes? You're okay. I'm getting signals. Is just to move on. At some point I will speak about fingers, but I don't bother with that now. It's too much boring stuff. Yes. Just very briefly, and I will cover next time in greater detail also, about the relationship between music, theater, dance, and also poetry, reading things, all of this, and sports as well. The fact is that playing music is a physical activity, and we have to feel the music with our bodies this way. A very important thing which I heard from the wonderful, brilliant Russian Soviet pianist Sviatoslav Richter, when he was asked, how do you get this fantastically orchestral sound on the piano? And he says, I play with my feet. Я играю ногами. This way. So in other words, there's the action of the feet this way. So, I'm going to stand up. Say if this actually, you can see this. Because if you stand up, there's a sense of feeling that you're grounded with the feet. And this is a similar feeling that you will have if you are doing sports or if you're involved in martial arts, anything. There's a sense of groundedness always. So it's here, and at the same time, the body picks up. So there's a kind of stretching of the body that we have in general. And an issue I find physically of many people, when they play, they kind of hang on their shoulders. Like that, this way. So this, and that will actually affect our breathing a lot, because if you have this groundedness, then we can actually feel that our lungs are actually doing this, and that also doing this. And perhaps I will get more into that in another class, but that's important. Now, the next thing has to do with the feeling of expression. And that is also something that we have to feel in a very physical way. So if I'm playing, that way, I'm actually feeling, sort of sculpting the music with not only the airstream moving this way, but also with my hands, yeah, and with my feet. So I'm feeling here, oh, and I'm squeezed, yeah, I squeeze and lift, squeeze, there. And that's not so different than if you are actually doing a recitation or doing a monologue, let's say, in a Shakespearean play, and you are expressing this way, that way. You do that physically in the instrument. So I think this will give a little bit of an introduction to what we'll be discussing in the next of these live streams. Now, I do hope that all of you were not too bored, of course, but mostly, and most important, I hope that you will all stay healthy, be very careful. We're still in the world in a very dangerous situation, and take care, and I hope to see you again very soon. Okay, thank you so much.